Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is January 27th. This is the 113th day since October 7th. This morning, I spent several hours. I'm here in Washington, D.C., and I spent several hours this morning in Alexandria, Virginia, with Alfred Street Baptist Church. Talking about what's been happening in the Middle East, talking about what's happening in Gaza, and praying and calling on God together, seeking to understand what we as Christians can do to respond to the situation since October 7th and the horrific attacks by Hamas, and seeking to bring an end to the bombing, the deaths, the killings in Gaza as well. And after 113 days of war and death and destruction, while there are still more than 130 hostages being held in Gaza, where do we go from here? And Churches for Middle East Peace, we continue to believe that a comprehensive ceasefire is the only way forward, that violence begets violence, that yes, Hamas needs to be punished for their crimes, but that civilians in Gaza do not. And that the turning off of water and food and gas and electricity is not the answer. And so we will continue to take action in that regard. We are praying and going before God and taking action with the US government and our elected officials to call for a ceasefire and to call for a comprehensive resolution to this crisis and to the conflict that's been going on for decades. So I'm grateful for churches that are seeking to learn. I'm seeking to learn as well. We will learn together. We're coming alongside of Jewish communities, Muslim communities. I just returned from more than 2 weeks in Israel, the Palestinian occupied territories, Jordan and Lebanon, meeting with Christian communities and others. And the war on Gaza has to be brought to an end, and we also have to seek the security and safety of Jewish people and stand up against anti-Semitism around the world. So there's much work to be done. A few highlights in terms of the news. In terms of UNRWA, the UN refugee agency that is responsible for Palestinian refugees, specifically in Gaza, but not only in the territory there, it's believed that, or charges have been brought forward that 12 agency employees potentially or allegedly were involved in the October 7th massacre. And so as a result, UNRWA immediately suspended the employees and started an investigation. But the United States, Canada, Australia, Italy, the UK, and Finland have all said that they are going to suspend the transfer of funds to UNRWA. This is hugely significant because UNRWA is meeting the needs of a significant number of the 2 million plus people in Gaza. The vast majority of people living in Gaza are refugees. UNRWA is meeting the needs of more than half of the displaced people right now in Gaza. So the head of UNRWA said on Friday that Israeli authorities provided UNRWA with information about the alleged involvement of several employees related to the October 7th attacks. He terminated their contracts, launched an investigation, and that they are horrified by the news. Hussein al-Sheikh, the PLO General Secretary, posted on X urging states to reverse their decisions about funding because of the humanitarian relief risks. Hamas condemned the UNRWA chief for deciding to terminate contracts with the UNRWA employees based on the information coming out of Israel. He said the Zionist information. Israel's foreign minister applauded the US decision to pull UNRWA funding because he argued that the UN agency serves as a civilian arm of Hamas. And then the UN's health agency, the World Health Organization, refuted Israel's accusation that the World Health Organization is in collusion with Hamas. And so there's been quite a conversation about UNRWA and also the World Health Organization in that regard. The Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis, there's concern that it's the last functioning hospital in Gaza, that it's on the brink of collapse, according to Haaretz. There also have been significant responses to the International Court of Justice's interim ruling that came out yesterday. And so Netanyahu said that the International Court of Justice rightly rejected the outrageous demand to deny Israel the right to basic self-defense, to which it is entitled as a country, but called the court's willingness to discuss the claim of genocide as a mark of disgrace that will not be erased for generations. The US State Department said the ruling was consistent with our view that Israel has the right to take action in self-defense, but that the allegations of genocide are unfounded. South Africa has hailed the ICJ ruling as a decisive victory. Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the the ruling was crucial, and he's encouraging on Israel, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which is viewed as a terrorist group by the United States. It's fighting alongside of Hamas in Gaza, said it condemned the world's reluctance to demand an immediate ceasefire. The senior Hamas official Sami Abu Zuhri said that the ruling called on Israel to take all measures to avoid acts of genocide, but stopped short of calling for a ceasefire, and was an important development for isolating Israel and exposing its crimes. Egypt has considered recalling its envoy to Israel after allegations made by the Israeli defense team at the World Court about Cairo's failure to bring humanitarian aid into Gaza, according to the Wall Street Journal. That's a big deal, of course, because there is a peace agreement between Egypt and Israel, and of course, between Israel and the Jordanians as well. Fighting has continued in the meantime in Gaza. There continues in South Gaza in the Khan Yunis district. We know as well that Joe Biden, our president here in the US, has spoken with the Egypt President Sisi about the war in Gaza. There continue to be conversations about the potential of a hostage prolonged ceasefire deal, but no news about that. The Israeli Defense Forces have said that they have opened a humanitarian corridor for residents in Khan Yunis. Honestly, in terms of the international conversation in that regard, we've heard a lot about humanitarian corridors, but we also hear that they're not really honored. So that gets reported in the Israeli news, but is not really reported in international news. Significant concern because there are torrential rains right now in Gaza, which is worsening the humanitarian situation there. Videos on social media are showing flooding in specifically the displaced people camps in the south. There's only makeshift tents there. So there's water, rain, mud. The conditions can be cold. People have such limited resources in general. There's an investigation in the Israeli cabinet about the failures of Israel to be able to determine that the October 7th attack by Hamas was going to happen. Also, there are still demonstrations in Israel rallying against Netanyahu and also calling for the release of hostages. In Tel Aviv, thousands are expected at 3 separate rallies. One's calling for immediate elections. The second is saying never again is now. This is International Holocaust Remembrance Day. And they're also calling for the return of hostages. And the third is an anti-occupation bloc-led protest, calling for a ceasefire, ending the siege on Gaza, and calling for a hostage deal. We know that family members of Israeli hostages that are held in Gaza are also protesting in front of Prime Minister Netanyahu's house in Caesarea. This is the 3rd week of those protests, and they're demanding of a hostage deal. In Lebanon, the Lebanese have reported that there were 2 people killed and additional people wounded by an Israeli strike in South Lebanon yesterday. So escalations continue at the border between Lebanon and Israel. And we know also that Yemen's Houthis said that their naval forces have carried out an operation targeting the British oil tanker Marlin Luanda in the Gulf of Aden, causing a fire to break out. CENTCOM said that a Houthi anti-ship missile fired at a U.S. Navy destroyer in the Gulf of Aden was shot down. The Houthis television station said today, Saturday, that the US and the UK launched 2 airstrikes targeting the port of Ras Isa in Yemen's Houthida province as well. So things are continuing in the broader Middle East, in terms of Lebanon, in terms of Yemen. We will continue to pray. We're continuing to mobilize. There will be some resources available online. The session I did today will be available online as well. So do check our website, www.cmep.org.